Okay, I'm live again. Okay, so my first hero in this series, I don't know how long this series is going to go on for. My first hero is this guy called Manuel. Now you might be thinking of 40 Towers with the little Spanish waiter who says, "I'm from Barcelona, I know nothing." It's not that Manuel. This Manuel is from Portugal. Okay, so I met him with my family in about 1978. We travelled to Portugal overland. To a little village in the Algarve called Fazetta, and we ended up staying on the island. There's an island there, like a sort of great big long sandbank. It's like a sort of half a mile from the shore. And at the time that there was lots of little sort of chalets built there on the island, just little small houses, little holiday homes, a few restaurants. It's probably still the same, much the same now, although a lot of it was destroyed when there was a storm a few years ago. But I think they've built it back up again. Okay, so Manuel, about Manuel, why is my hero? I mean, originally he was my dad's hero, but I heard so much about him, and I like the idea of him, like father, like son, and that. So, why was he such a great guy? Why is he such an interesting guy? You heard, maybe you know about the war in Angola. When Portugal were just trying to sort of control Angola, and there was this war, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. Loads of Portuguese people had to go, went to sort of do national service in Angola and died, and no good really came out of it. It was just this terrible thing, like European people trying to control everyone and taking over other people's countries and enslaving them, that kind of thing. Not a good picture. It's not a nice picture at all. A lot of people don't want to think about these things. Anyway, so in Portugal, going back sort of 50 or 60 years, they had a fascist government. Now, when they had a fascist government, Manuel, he was the only communist in the whole of Fazetta. Like for a while, he was the only outward communist when everyone else was fascist. He just stood up and he said, "I'm a communist." And he was tortured. What they used to do is they would lock him up, because he was a communist. The police would lock him up for no reason, really. They'd put him in jail and give him a hard time and try to get him to become a fascist, and he wouldn't. He stuck with his, beliefs. He said, "I'm not communist. All the time, you people are going to be fascists." I think people should be able to choose for themselves what they want to be. So he just kept telling them he's going to be a communist. They used to tie him to a stake in the river. There's a river that led out to sea, and so they would put a wooden stake, bury it in, put it into the ground, and then tie him to it. Tie him to the stake, so that when the tide would come in, you come up to his neck, and the crabs would eat his feet. Not completely eat them all, but they would pick at his feet and stuff, and try to eat him and stuff. And for days, like 3 or 4 days or a week or something, maybe 2 weeks, they would keep him there. And his wife would have to come and feed him when the tide was out, you know. It's a true story. It's not, I'm not making this up. This is what really happened. And then sometimes they would put him in prison for a few days or a week, you know, a few weeks. And when he was in prison, he used to sing these songs. He would sing these songs saying, "It doesn't matter what you do to me, the truth will live on in your children." Anyway, this went on for years, you know, and eventually, after so many years of him being a communist and everyone else being fascists, eventually the country became communist. The whole country changed to communism, right? And then suddenly he was a hero, right? But almost immediately he became an anarchist. Dear. There's more to it than that. Let me just carry on. There's more to it. So as soon as the rest of the country became communist, and in theory, you know, they would have forgiven him all his like difficult ways, and they would have like celebrated him. He was the original communist, you know. Now the whole country become communist, right? So he was now practically a celebrity, you know, and a hero to everybody. And that to him, that he didn't want that, so he became an anarchist. You know, he would ignore any rules. He used to walk around. This is now when my dad met him. When we went down there in the 70s. This is when he'd become like an anarchist. So he would tell people he's an anarchist. He would just he'd walk around smoking joints, not all the time, because he didn't go out of his way to buy cannabis or anything. But if someone gave him some cannabis, which they did, because there was a lot of hippies around then, you know, he would just walk around in front of the police and smoking it, and the police would say to him, look, Manuel, you should put that out. That's like, you're not allowed to do that. But because of his history, because he had been a communist when everyone else was fascists, they wouldn't arrest him, right? They wouldn't cause him, they wouldn't put him in prison anymore. They just allowed him to be, right? Because he'd become like a proper hero to everybody. But one they couldn't contain, you know, they couldn't put like shackles on him. They couldn't make, you know, control him. That's the problem with him. They couldn't control him. And he wouldn't be controlled. Okay, so another little thing about Manuel. In Fazetta, there was a man who was the richest man in the village. I mean, it's a town now. There's quite a lot of people living there. It's like, I don't know how many, 50,000, 60,000 people or something, probably. So the richest man in the village, right? Every week he would ask for Manuel to come and give him a shave, because Manuel, when he was younger, he used to be a barber, and he would give the best shave in the village with a cutthroat razor. You know, he was a really, really excellent barber, very, very careful with his hands. He never made a mistake. He was just a perfect barber, and he was the best barber in the town. And so the richest man in the village would ask him to come every week to give him a shave, just once a week. I think on a Sunday or something, you know. And so Manuel used to go and every week and give him a shave. I think it was on a Tuesday. For some reason, it was on a Tuesday. That's what I remember that, right? So every Tuesday, Manuel would come to the richest man in the village, and he would have all his equipment with him, you know, and he would. And Manuel's one of the poorest people in the village, right? He's got almost no money at all. But he would go there and he would give the richest man in the village a shave. And the richest man, because he really loved having a shave from Manuel. You know, he'd had it all his life. You know, they were a similar age, you know. But whenever he tried to give Manuel sort of payment, Manuel would never accept any payment for it. You know, he'd never. And the rich guy got really a bit frustrated sometimes, and he would say to Manuel, "Look, whatever you want, just tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you." And Manuel would just say, "No, I don't want anything from you. You know, I'm happy to just come and give you a shave. That's payment in itself, you know." And you can't. I'm not making this up. This is a true story. There's no punchline. You won't actually like that at the end of the story. It's not very nice. But this was Manuel. This is what he was like. So anyway, that's my family all went down to Portugal in the late 70s, about 1978. So we met him then. That's when we met him. We heard all these stories. My dad and some of his friends, we used to live out on the island in these tents for like 6 or 7 weeks in the end of the summer. And he sometimes would come out to visit us, and they had a bong. They had bongs made of like plastic bottles and bamboo pipes and stuff, and they would all smoke bongs, and so would Manuel, even though he was like 20 or 30 years older than them. He was kind of like an old man, you know. My dad and his friends were in their sort of early 30s. I was about 7 or 8. I had a couple of younger brothers. So yeah, this is this guy Manuel. What happened to him eventually? What we found out was that he just got put in an old people's home. And one day, when he was sort of like in his early 70s, he just went out one day and just walked in front of a bus. They don't know whether it was deliberate or not. Maybe it was deliberate, maybe it wasn't. I suspect it was probably deliberate, you know. That's what people thought. People thought it was probably deliberate. He just committed suicide because he was fed up with his life. Well, that's the story of Manuel. The man that was a communist when everybody else was a fascist, and became an anarchist when everyone else became communist. Okay, so who's going to be on my next? I think Socrates will probably be on my next number 2 hero. I'll talk about him next time. Thanks for watching.